Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This is a book summary of David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants by Malcolm Gladwell. You may be an effing tough guy, but I'm a crazy guy. Billy McBride, Billy Bob Thornton's character in the HBO series Goliath, utters these words. In contrast, crazy people never give up. A fascinating look at how we've misrepresented and framed underdogs and misfits is provided by David and Goliath. Rethinking our assumptions about strengths, weaknesses, advantages, and disadvantages is a challenge Malcolm Gladwell presents in a compelling manner. Malcolm Gladwell is not your average self-help author. To achieve this effect, he employs rigorous social science research and vivid storytelling. The stories he tells are full of wisdom and insight, and they serve as a framework for his major theories and findings. First, the book examines the advantages and disadvantages of the topic, and how we can reframe these in a positive light. Desirable difficulties, as Gladwell refers to them, are the focus of the second section. Desirable difficulties are obstacles that we've been taught to fear, but which can actually be used to our advantage if we know how to handle them. We'll take a look at our assumptions about strengths and weaknesses, and we'll examine the David and Goliath story and metaphor in detail. No, he wasn't the underdog. Is Goliath as formidable as he appears to be? Finally, is the never-give-up attitude of underdogs the only reason they win, or is there something else going on? This is a battle between Goliath and David. No matter what your religious affiliation, or whether you've heard the story in the context of a secular metaphor, David versus Goliath is a well-known story. Even though David was a long shot, his victory over the titanic Goliath can only be described as a miracle. Is that correct? It's Malcolm Gladwell's philosophy that we need to question everything more thoroughly. Throughout David and Goliath, he encourages us to examine our assumptions about common-sense views, our opinions about the world, as well as our rational and irrational thought processes. There's a lot more to the story of David versus Goliath, and our understanding of advantages and disadvantages. Using the David and Goliath story, Gladwell challenges our preconceived notions of what it means to be a down-and-outer. The common belief is that underdogs are underdogs because they are underdogs because they are underdogs because they are underdogs. In addition, the audience is left with a significant sense of surprise when the unexpected individual or team triumphs over the odds. According to the book's thesis, David had the upper hand and would therefore prevail. There were cavalry, infantry, and projectile warriors in the army at the time of the story. Horses and chariots were used by the cavalry. Warriors and foot soldiers made up the infantry, while archers and slingshot masters made up the projectile warriors. It was a well-known fact that slingers, the snipers of their time, were deadly and highly skilled. Supposedly, an adept shot can kill from 200 yards away, and if well-trained, they will rarely miss. According to Gladwell, the data shows that any betting shop would put David ahead of Goliath in this battle. Although Goliath was a colossal figure, his stature actually worked against him. He was an easy target because of his size, his uncoordinated appearance, and his poor eyesight. According to our assumptions about pros and cons and advantages and disadvantages, larger is not necessarily better. A more pragmatic approach to asymmetrical conflict analysis involves testing assumptions on the other side of our assumptions. As an example, what are the benefits and drawbacks of being large? Is it always preferable to be quick? Is getting into the best college going to help us? We can use our weaknesses and strengths more effectively if we are aware of them and question our preconceived notions of what it means to be weak or vulnerable. Pros and cons of each other. Advantages and disadvantages are viewed as inseparable and cannot coexist. Binaries. As a result, we're led to believe that those who have more advantages than us are less likely to succeed. According to Gladwell, there are two kinds of advantages, those that have drawbacks as well as those that have advantages. Vivek Ranadive, a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and former CEO of TIBCO, has a fascinating story to tell us about. It was an unexpected turn of events that put Ranadive in charge of his daughter's basketball team. The odds were stacked against him as a coach because he was in uncharted territory and had little familiarity with the game. Furthermore, the team his daughter was playing on was abysmal to say the least. The group lacked the most basic competencies and had no realistic prospect of acquiring them in the allotted time frame. That being the case, how did Ranadive's squad make it to the national finals? It dawned on Ranadive that they could win by exploiting their opponent's weaknesses. Aggressive tactics were used to keep their opponents from moving forward or taking possession of the ball. So, Despite the fact that Raonidive's team only ever won with low scores and was ruining the game by not playing basketball, their strategy was foolproof. This is a reminder that, when you have nothing to work with, you have to come up with an alternative plan. Rather than focusing on his lack of skill, Raonidive focused on his desire to work hard and agitate. He held to the belief that either you give up, or you work tirelessly and tenaciously to achieve your goals. The inverted U-shape. With an upside-down U-chart, you'll see an ascending trajectory followed by a slight curve before plummeting precipitously. This has both positive and negative aspects. Consider the size of a classroom as an example. In your opinion, what is the ideal class size? Class sizes with fewer students tend to be viewed as more beneficial. To illustrate optimal classroom size, we can use the inverted U-graph to show that too small and too large are both detrimental. In the analogy of the three little pigs, the just right is there. Applying this theory to courage is also possible. Courage is a medium between fear and confidence, Aristotle famously stated. According to this, a delicate balance between fear and confidence can be achieved. We can see that both fear and confidence have a negative effect on courage if they are at the beginning and end of an inverted U-curve. Confidence and fear must be balanced in order to have courage. As a result of excessive fear or excessive confidence, we become cowards or irrationally confident. A healthy dose of apprehension is necessary to counteract our proclivity for rash behavior. Gladwell argues that we should all be searching for our personal inverted U-curve optimum points. It's important to examine what motivates us and how we perform at our best, he adds. Incentives are critical to many of us, but they have their limits. Getting a prize or reward when everyone else does not affect your mood. In the United States, there is a well-known World War II study. In this study, one of the most significant and poignant findings was that of promotion satisfaction. Military police and members of the Air Force were asked about their career aspirations, the willingness to recognize and reward success, and other aspects of job satisfaction. The military police were found to be significantly happier as a result of the research. The military police had a much more difficult time moving up in the ranks for a variety of reasons. This meant that it was acceptable to celebrate a promotion if one had been granted, and it was also acceptable to say that no one is getting promoted if none had been granted. While in the Air Force, there were high levels of dissatisfaction due to the ease with which promotion was granted. It was assumed that failure to advance in your career was due to your incompetence, and success was viewed as a sign that well everyone is. The only way to gain courage is to put yourself out there and try new things. People often say that the reason underdogs succeed is because they have more courage than one might expect given their relative lack of talent or ability. Our belief in a predisposition to bravery has also been widely disseminated. Either we're brave or we're not, in other words. This is yet another supposition that should be questioned. Gladwell illustrates this point by comparing the mood of Londoners during World War II. In anticipation of the morale drop and increase in stress and anxiety caused by bombings, hospitals were opened in London. Germany dropped 30,000 bombs and over 500 tons of explosives on the city over the course of the war. People were killed or injured and millions of homes were lost as a result of the disaster. Despite the terror and devastation caused by the Blitz, the people of London persevered. Research shows that we often experience extreme fear and terror of anticipation, but we survive the event and learn from it. There is nothing to fear but fear itself, as the saying goes. The fear of what's to come is often worse than the event itself, and this is an experience that aids in the development of our courage. There are times when we may not be able to recover from traumatic events, but this is not the case all the time. We can, however, often turn disadvantages into advantages and cultivate our ability to bounce back from setbacks. In adversity, we have the ability to reframe it and find strength in it. Difficulty is what you want. Acquiring resilience and strength can be achieved through adversity. Taking an already difficult aptitude test becomes even more difficult when Gladwell tells the story. To make matters worse, the font was changed to a distracting and difficult-to-read style by the researchers. What's going on? This year's performance and test scores were better than last year. Make things even more difficult than they should be, as we've learned from the 4% rule, because humans thrive on being stretched. In many cases, people with dyslexia are able to use their listening and social skills to compensate for their reading and learning difficulties. Gladwell also discusses the fact that the majority of people attempting to obtain a degree in science or mathematics fail miserably. He inquires as to the reasons for the high dropout rate in these programs, as well as the best approach to obtaining your desired degree. With regards to class rankings and the overvaluation of prestige, a large portion has to do with this according to the argument. The best way to succeed in college is not to get into your first, second or even third choice university. As a society, We place such a high value on exclusive universities that this may seem absurd. However, the best predictor of success is not your intelligence level, but rather your relative intelligence. Your chances of dropping out of school are significantly increased if, according to the statistics, you're in the bottom 3% of your class. To avoid finishing in the bottom third of your class, Gladwell suggests following any strategy he can think of. This has nothing to do with mediocrity, rather, we underestimate the psychological toll that can be taken by finishing last in any class. In this case, the lesson is not to place too much importance on prestige and underestimate the costs of not succeeding at that university. And if you're constantly being outperformed by a select few of your peers, your motivation begins to wane. This is yet another example of how we assign value in an irrational manner. Irrespective of which school you go to, it's all about your position in the rankings, so that you can gain motivation and succeed. Isn't it odd that we've never considered the drawbacks of having a high social status or getting into a prestigious school? In the end, rethinking one's perspective can be a powerful and liberating experience. Malcolm Gladwell isn't urging us to rewrite the rules of the world around us, but he is showing us the enormous value in reassessing our challenges and using them in a more meaningful way. When we're honest about our limitations, we can take note of them, and then we can stop moaning about all the things that stand in our way, and we can get going. Our confidence and courage are built when we put our trust in ourselves. Having faith in our abilities, embracing opportunities, and rethinking obstacles and challenges are the keys to success. Malcolm Gladwell has made a significant contribution by providing theories to organize our experiences. That people are experience-rich and theory-poor is what he asserts that the majority of people lack access to organizing principles in their daily routines. For those who aren't immersed in the academic world, and who have no time to follow or acquire grand theories, they lack a framework for understanding the world around them. Even if we don't agree with everything he says, he keeps the door open for further discussion. He says that it's not about converting people to his way of thinking, but rather engaging in discussions about new ways of thinking, supported by evidence-based data. We overestimate irrationality and resist change, and so often we accept the status quo as it is. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.